My question would be about rhyming contrasted with sound. I want to focus more on sound for the next poem I write, so I need advice on that. So, I think what you mean is that I'm going to make sure I have this question right. Sound is like a big concept that encompasses lots of different techniques, right? That do different things. And something that you are doing is rhyming already in this poem, right? And I can already see that it rhymes. Brain, maimed, scrapes, yesterday, rage, paid, prior, cage, admit, dirt, sit, boy, consumidor, right? So we have some rhyming going on. So I interpret your question then as how we can go beyond just rhyming in the poem to have a more sort of holistic sonic quality throughout the poem to create something more overall musical. And I think that's like a great question because I think the first thing poets learn to do is rhyme. I think the second thing poets learn to do is alliterate. And I feel like you can like see someone like in their phases. Like I can go through my old poetry and I can see there was a phase where I just like alliterated a ton. And before that, it was rhyming, right? And then I think but what happens after that, right? Once we know how to rhyme, alliterate, that's when things like assonance come in. And, that's also like slant rhymes. That's where we have like more, internal stuff rather than like stuff at end. That's when we have like the idea of the breath. Somewhere in here, like optional side quest, people learn verse, right, as a sonic quality. We have at some point, maybe after these first two, how we use the line break to pace our reader through lines. Anaphora, right? The repetition of a single idea at the start of multiple lines, or the repetition of similar sounds at the start of repeated lines. Right? So it all goes far beyond rhyming and alliteration. And so the question would be, how do we approach this big and beautiful world of the beyond? And that's a big question. But I think we can try to discuss that. And it sounds like Nikki might also have some advice. I think Nikki is someone worth listening to, S0dephi, because Nikki does write very musical poems and has a good concept of sound. But I'll also maybe try to give mine, and we'll also try to give it through the context of this poem, because, right, this poem will tell us about you, right? This poem actually tells us, like, this is a pretty recent poem of yours as far as I know. So this will tell us, like, where you actually stand, what you're doing. Are you doing things without noticing, because you may very well have picked up some of these techniques not knowing that you actually have them. So we'll try to use this as an approach to figure out, what's missing. That sound good? That sounds good to me. I think that sounds good. That makes sense. That seems like a logical approach to this. Yeah? Yeah. So, here is... It's kind of unfocused. El Odio. The simplicity of it sticks to the brain. From spring to winter, the soul was maimed. Festering in the wound, it scrapes away, away the boy from yesterday. Once filled with yellow, now hollow with rage. Leaves fall, crunch underfoot, no attention paid. I'll love you forever, he said half a century prior, and he'll take his pain to his underground cage. Tu ojos fuiste tan bella, he'll always admit. But the love ached as her body sunk into the dirt. And all that was left as he sit, was the husk of a boy, now torn apart. El odio, todo consumidor. Direct translation would be appreciated, since my Spanish understanding and comprehension is vibes-based, and I kind of get what those lines are saying, right? Something about eyes and beauty, some conjugation of one of those weird, like, ser verbs, hate, something about consuming, or a consumer, or something. But like that's about as far as my interpretation of these lines goes. So Ray or S0dephi. But sound, I was underlining as we go, right? Because I think there are some good things happening. Nikki, you say I like the pain/cage as an internal slant. Which is pain cage, right? We do have like a lot of internal rhymes, and we have like a pretty high density of rhyming, and I would agree that like the sonic focus of this poem seems to be rhyme. Right, so if we like went through and talked about like literally everything, right, the simplicity of it sticks to the brain. From spring to winter the soul was maimed, festering and spring. In the wound it scrapes with these, maybe I should be color coding, away, away the boy from yesterday. I think that's all of like the straight up rhymes. Once filled with yellow, now hollow. Yellow, now hollow. That one's not perfect as a rhyme, but it's close, right? With rage, leaves fall, crunch underfoot, no attention paid. I'll love you forever, he said half a century prior. Forever, prior, it's close. And he'll take his pain to his underground cage. We have take as well here. Tu ojos fuiste tan bella. Your eyes were so beautiful. El odio todo consumidor. The hate all consuming. The all consuming hatred. Gotcha. Tu ojos fuiste con bella. He'll always admit. But the love ached. Like, bella, always ached. But even those, that's like assonant. Let's not rhyme. As her body sunk into the dirt, and all that was left as he sit was the husk of a boy, now torn apart. El odio todo consumidor. So, the rhymes sort of happen less, right? Like, I think we have a much denser kind of sonic thing happening here. And then as we get into the last section, it quiets down a little bit, which I think makes sense, right? We have like this love that dies and collapses, and we have this boy who has turned into like the embodiment of hatred. um and that that makes sense that we would end up with something a bit less emotive sonically, maybe less energetic, because we have like a collapse. um so yes, we are rhyming, and I think we're rhyming to like quite a large extent, right? We have like pretty consistent end rhymes, and we have like a lot of internal rhymes, and that's cool. And I think it's pretty clear that like you have understanding of the rhyme. Like you've sort of mastered this, maybe not mastered, but like you've become acquainted with this tool. I also sort of have a feeling with the poem that we use like Minecraft as an example, right? Minecraft. We have a bunch of different tools, right? We have like the sword, we have the axe, we have the pickaxe, we have a hoe in Minecraft. There's one more. There's a shovel, right? Maybe there's some new ones in modern day Minecraft that I'm not aware of. But right, like these are the different tools, and different tools are great. Like, why do we have different tools? Is maybe a question that we could ask. Maybe I'll ask this directly to y'all. What is the point of like having different tools for like in this game, in Minecraft? We're familiar with Minecraft. I think everyone is. Why do they exist? Why don't we just have one tool? Not a trick question, like why is this the case? Yes, because everything has a different purpose, right? Sword is for like killing, right? Axe is for trees, pickaxe is for stone and minerals, right? Life is Roblox, yes. Hoe is for farming. The shovel is for digging. For aesthetics, I mean, actually, that might be a reasonable answer, right? We have purpose. We also have aesthetic. Minecraft is a game, right? Minecraft is supposed to be like fun and enjoyable and like interesting, right? We want games to be fun. And Minecraft would be boring. More boring if you could only create pickaxes, I think. Right? It's like the everything is aesthetics argument. Which I've favored at times before. But like everything we do is for an aesthetic purpose. But yeah, it wouldn't be as interesting if we only had pickaxes, and I think that's actually like a reasonable joke answer, as another idea. But all of these things do different things, and I think right now, S0dephi, you've got your pickaxe. Because an axe can be used for pretty much everything if you try hard enough. I mean, yeah. You've got your pickaxe and you're using it for everything, S0dephi. And I think it's great because there's a beautiful comfort in like having your tool, right? And like knowing how to use it. And you've got this great pickaxe. But I think we could benefit from more tools. And so like the question is like what would we, but what if it breaks? Yeah. Or what if you're trying to do some farming, right? In Minecraft, you literally can't, um, right, like till the soil without the hoe. Like it only does that one thing. Um, if you're trying to kill monsters, right, your pickaxe is gonna really suck. So, um, we'd like we'd like to have other things, and I think a good place to start with that, if we're continuing the Minecraft example, um, maybe you're already like chopping lots of trees. Like you just happen to have fun in Minecraft chopping lots of trees. So we would tell that person, like, maybe you should, make an axe instead of just using your pickaxe. And with the poem, what that means is we can look at what you're already doing and what you're already like sort of exhibiting, because I don't think you are only using rhymes in this poem. And this is sort of something I hinted at earlier, is that you might already have some tools in your toolbox that you don't know you have. Maybe because you don't have names for them. Maybe because you haven't practiced them or thought about them. But a lot of like literary devices are nothing more than like natural quirks of language, right? Alliteration is just when we happen to have similar consonant sounds nearby to each other. Sometimes we will accidentally alliterate in sentences because like it's just a quirk of language. And I think you do alliterate in this poem. Assonance, similar, accidentally using similar consonant sounds. Do a different color for this. Purple, ing, spring, winter, it, sticks, simplicity, right? So that's called assonance, is to use similar vowel sounds around each other. So the simplicity of it sticks to the brain. From spring to winter, the soul was maimed. And then we have this, so the alliteration, simplicity, the simplicity of it sticks to the brain. From spring to winter, the soul was maimed. The festering in the wound, it scrapes away the boy from yesterday. Right? We are already doing some alliteration. We're already doing some assonance. But, I think a question to ask is like, how. I think the really difficult question, one that's still difficult for me sometimes, is, we have names for the tools. we know that like a sword and an axe and a pickaxe. We know that rhyme, alliteration, and assonance exist. We know that, line breaks and anaphora exist. The thing that's less obvious about literary devices is what they're used for. Right? Like, chat. What does a rhyme do? What feeling does a rhyme create? I think I actually want to know your answers. Like, what's the purpose of a rhyme? It's not something we ask ourselves a lot. I think there are answers. There are probably clear, maybe consistent answers across literature. Y'all might come up with some of them. But it's a lot more difficult than an axe chops wood, right? Like a rhyme. What material is that for? What emotion? What effect does a rhyme create? I don't know if anyone has ideas. It is a difficult question. Not for the faint of heart. I have ideas myself. Or what does alliteration do? Or what does assonance do? You know, rhyme just changes the musicality slightly for me. Changes it how? What's the quality of the change? Right? It's really difficult to put specific words on that. Does it make the musicality lighter, heavier? Does it make it faster or slower? Does it make it more rigid? Does it make it freer? Does it change depending on the context in which we use the rhyme or in which we use the alliteration or assonance? It scratches my brain in a lighter way. Okay. So a rhyme might create lightness, maybe? A rhyme creates a similar sound. Maybe that's a good place to start, right? It creates something similar. If it was a song, it'd be a similar note. Or it's almost like we're automatically going into the idea of musicality. Now, so now I'm gonna go into my musical background, because I have quite a musical background. I almost wish my piano was plugged into my audio interface, because I could show this really clearly. I wonder if oh no, it's not an XLR. Okay, so I know from linguistics that rhyming is an important factor in memorization in non-literate societies. Yeah, also welcome in Death's Head. I think that's because it creates repetition, right? We have repetition, and this can actually help us understand what we can do with a rhyme, right? When we repeat a word over and over again, let's say I'm going to write a poem right now. This poem is called Love, and the poem goes like this, right? This is just me making up a poem called Love, right? That's the poem. The word love 5 times. Now, when we repeat the same thing over and over again, the same word or the same note, let's say this is like the same, G note over and over again 5 times, right? This is boring, probably, right? Love, 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 love. Or like G, 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 right? Like, this is not interesting. However, it's like on its own, the repetition doesn't really help us. And maybe it's because it's the mix of repetition and difference. But repetition also does invite us to do something specific. Because we don't have to read love 5 times, like love, 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 love. I can read it as love, 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 love. And now we've actually created maybe a little bit of interest in our 5 loves. Over these 5 notes, I could, crescendo. I could get louder and then quieter. I could play this note kind of long and then this note short. And then I could play this note in between. I could play this note for 1 minute and then this one short again. Ba, ba, ba ba ba, right? Slightly more interesting. So repetition does something on its own where it invites us as the listener, as the reader, to like interpret or to inject some kind of change into the work. Um, like that's something that repetition can do, and I think rhyme, right? It's a repetition of similar sounds. And when we keep hearing the similar sound, it can get a little bit boring sometimes. But if we use those similar sounds as like, I don't know, a um mm, as something onto which we add variety, then it might create more interest. So it invites us to like ascribe something new. The simplicity of it sticks to the brain. From spring to winter the soul was maimed. So I can say those like kind of the same way, where those two lines don't develop. Or I can say, the simplicity of it sticks to the brain. From spring to winter, the soul was maimed. Right? Maimed, softer than brain. And like, now it's inviting us to have like some amount of change and variety. We can also have rhymes give motion, right? We can do like yellow, now hollow, where we have these same sounds happening. And if we just go like once filled with yellow, now hollow with rage, it's fine, right? But if we go once filled with yellow, now hollow with rage, right? The repetition of the sound, if we like make it change, it can create some interest. Ow, ow, ow. Yeah. Once filled with yellow, now hollow. Right? And change is very evident when things are the same. Let's say that again. Change is more evident when things are the same. I think this is true, right? Because if I have, let's say the same note over and over again, then like the pitch of that note, my mind doesn't have to think about how that is changing. So like everything else is staying the same. But then when something else changes within the interpretation of those notes, like that's going to stick out more, I think. So this doesn't really tell us what rhyming does, though. But, rhyming, is two things that are the same. Same in sound. Same in that kind of auditory quality. And rhyme can do a lot of things. Because like rhyme can make something lighter where we have this repetition and it feels like it sort of carries us through, and it's like, oh, we have this familiar thing that allows us to have motion. I think rhyme can also like slow us down because we might recognize something that's already come before and be like, let's say we have a line that's like A, B, C, A. We can do like the dog was fat. His fur was brown. This is like intentionally sort of bad. he his belly was full because he ate a cat. You know, this is our poem, right? The dog was fat, his fur was brown, his belly was full because he ate a cat. And like in this case, the rhyme that we've created like gives us a feeling of punctuation, of like an end to something, because we've like recapitulated the original idea. So a rhyme can be punctuation, a rhyme can be motion, a rhyme can be lightness. A rhyme can be a lot of things that are like deeply dependent on the context around it, which maybe is like the inherent issue with my earlier question of like, what does a rhyme do? Like, a rhyme does a lot of things. But, so there are like two directions we can go from your poem, right? When you ask like, I am rhyming, but I want to have a better concept of sound. And one way to do that is to, think about like, what are my rhymes doing? Like, you could be analytic in the writing process or in the editing process of like, what does this rhyme accomplish? How does it create, what feelings does it create within my poem? Does it feel like it slows it down? Does it feel like it speeds it up? Do I want the poem to be faster or slower at this point? So should the rhyme be here or not? Like, that's a way we can think of it. And then I think that moves toward the idea of sound, right? Because like, what is sound in a poem, right? We talk about like, oh, this poem has great sound. This poem has a really effective use of sound. And I think, sound, it's not just about like using all the techniques. I think earlier someone said, you can have like the perfect grammatical poem, and that doesn't mean it's right or that it's good. And I think like, you can have a poem that uses every single sonic technique, and it can still just not sound good. And I think that's because, it's about how we use sound to like interact with the rest of the poem. In the sad poem, are we using our poetic techniques, our literary techniques, to make this poem sound sad? Are we writing a sad poem but using techniques that make it sound happy? Are we intending to do that? Are we intending to add levity or heaviness or speed or pacing? I think that's what sound really means. It's like, how does the sound contribute to the overall effect of the poem? And so one way we can do that is to just like think about it more, and practice it more. Like, think about, I'm gonna write a sad poem, but use the sound to like evoke that. The issue is like, that's a really difficult thing to do, like the actual action of practicing that. And that, like, more the reason to practice it maybe. But also a lot of people don't write like that. Like, a lot of poets just like are very present in the moment of just like putting stuff on the page and letting stuff come out. So just like practicing, I'm gonna write sad sound is maybe not great advice. But I mean, I can't stress enough the value of reading, right? Because you can read a poem and say, oh, the sounds in this poem make me think of this. The sounds in this poem make me feel a certain way. The way these words roll off the tongue feels nice. I mean, right, like Nikki said earlier, right? Assonance, alliteration, and consonants are like liquid gold to my brain. A lot of this stuff can be very intuitive and not so much like analytic and technical, at which point it's like reading something or saying it out loud and being like um um you know, that part sounds like liquid gold. That part sounds like trash, for better or for worse. That part sounds like feathers. Is it good that it sounds like feathers? Like, that's where, I don't know, like a very critical aspect might start to help you. The other thing, right, is, right, we talked about maybe like how we can expand one tool, our pickaxe, and like thinking about this thing. We can also just learn more literary devices. Because if all we really use is rhyme, it'll sort of come across that this poem has like a lot of rhymes and it's very reliant on the rhyme. Just by having more tools in the toolbox, you naturally kind of start to experiment with different things and finding the ways they interact with each other, and some alliteration here, some assonance here, some rhyming over there, some interesting line breaks here, right? And then it tends to balance out, and that's where like style emerges, right? Once you have all the tools, how do you use rhymes that are different from other people? That will just like emerge naturally. But having a larger base of skills will allow for that sort of stylistic expression to come to full fruition, right? Where you develop a sound that is yours. And that can only be done through like what you like and what you vibe with. But to get there, right, we learn more literary devices. And maybe I'll just go through these, like actually talk about what they are. They can be found online, but like I might as well explain it because that's helpful, right? What's a teacher for if not teaching? You also want to look at how you're using your stresses because they also affect the feeling. Good practice for that is writing ballads and sonnets. Yeah, so that's another tool. Stresses. There's a lot of these. But yeah, that's good advice. That kind of goes into the vein of how do we know if a work is good? If a drama makes you laugh or a comedy doesn't, that's a fail. Yeah. The comedy sets out to make you laugh. The drama doesn't. And part of it is probably how we set out to use our sound and how the reader perceives what the writer's intention is and what they've set out to do. And yeah, I think that's like, I usually use the word effective to describe that. I think I have a different definition of good. But effective is like setting out to do what it wants to do. And having more of these tools, I think, helps us be effective writers. And maybe being effective helps us be good. Though that's a whole discussion. So we can use this poem to talk about other literary techniques. right? Because this poem already does them, and that's really cool. So I think I'll just like go through a bunch of them, and then I guess before I do that, right, I want to bring up the question of like, okay, so you know what a literary technique is, you know what a rhyme is, you know what a you know what stress is, you know what assonance is. Once you're like aware of these things, um, how do we practice them? Because it seems like, right, we want to get better at using these things. And to get better, we usually need to like practice. We need to put in some amount of effort, some amount of like concerted time to figure these things out. And I think, you know, half of the battle is won in knowing. Isn't that a thing? Knowing is half the battle. Like once you know what assonance is, I feel like it almost unlocks the skill on its own because you'll start to notice it in your own writing. So the first thing you can do is to write and then like start noticing the things you're doing. And like we all roughly know what rhyming is because I think like we learn that as children, like how to rhyme. And so, I think it's maybe the most basic literary technique. And so we notice rhyming in our own writing. And we're like, oh, wow, that rhymes. Should I rhyme here? Is rhyming good? Do I like this rhyme? And I think once you know what assonance is, once you know what alliteration is, once you know what stress, once you know what enjambment, which is the use of line breaks, once you know what anaphora is, once you know about the idea of breath or the idea of internal rhyming or slant, you notice them, right? It's like when you, I don't know, you learn a new word and then you like start to say it. It starts to slowly be incorporated into your regular language. Um, so that's like half of it. But also when we learn something new, we can do very intentional practice. Like Nikki says, funny enough, limericks are great practice for assonance. But another thing we can do is like beyond like other than like form like that, we can just say, I'm going to write an assonant poem. I'm going to write an alliterative poem. Write a poem that uses a lot of alliteration. Write a poem that uses a lot of assonance. Write a poem where the only thing you're focusing on doing is enjambment or how you break the lines. And then if you do that, the poem will suck, probably. It might not, you might get lucky. These tend to suck because they're like exercises. That being said, one of Mary Oliver's most famous poems ever was written as an exercise to show an example to someone else. So these could be good. But like what these are gonna do is they're gonna train you to like notice these different things and to start using them. And they're gonna be heavy-handed, or they're gonna be not heavy-handed enough, or they're gonna be tacky and corny. And then you're gonna like look at them and you're like, wow, that sucks. That's tacky and corny. How can I alliterate better? How can I alliterate in a way that I like? And that's the driving factor, right? Not what someone else thinks of your alliteration exercise because it's an exercise, but to be like, okay, I'm practicing alliteration. I wrote this. I think it sucks, right? And you can notice in your own poem, like, why it sucks. And it's like, I'm not going to do that again. Or I'm going to remember that it sucks when I do this. And then You're going to write another one. And you're going to say, oh, I like the alliteration at this part. And what you're doing is then you are like building your style, right? Your sound, your own personal sound, based on all of this is based on your preference, right? This is you teaching yourself. Rather than someone saying there's a right way to alliterate, there's a right way to rhyme, there's a right way to assonant, like you can just like try stuff and you say, I like this. And then you develop your own style. Because that's what it should be, right? We should write the things we like. I think it's better to write write poems that you like rather than poems that other people like. And that's what I say at the end of stream, right? Keep making art you love, right? I think that's the origin of good art, is an effective art, is starting with what you want to make and what you want to write. So that's the idea, right? We're going to take a break in a moment, and then we'll maybe talk about some of these and how you could go about using them, S0dephi, and how you could go about thinking about those things. Although I'd imagine that some of this has maybe already planted seeds, hopefully, in people's minds. We full on learning Baroque styles. Yeah, Baroque is like the extent of ornamentation and like doing technical things, right? Brevities are really great practice as well. Really help me with my conciseness. Yeah, and then you don't like spend too much time on your exercise, because like it's sort of dumb if your exercise takes you like 3 weeks to write one poem. Probably better to do like a 4-line poem, an 8-line poem that practices the thing rather than not finish anything at all. But yeah, we're going to take a break. You're going to stand up, move away from the screen, have a snack, move your body. It's good for you. And then when we come back, we'll talk more about specific literary devices and how they're maybe being used in this poem already, and where we can go from there. Cool. I'll be right back. Hello. Welcome back. I hope we stood up and moved around. I hope we actually did that. That would be good. Okay. We're still reading this one. We're still reading the poem. Here it is. We're sort of not totally reading the poem. We're using the poem as a launching off point for lots of other conversations. Welcome back to you as well, Nikki. Okay. Poem. I'm gonna read it again because we're gonna use it now. I'm not really doing any meaning analyzing, which is fine. But here's Odio again. The simplicity of it sticks to the brain. From spring to winter the soul was maimed, festering in the wound it scrapes away the boy from yesterday. Once filled with yellow, now hollow with rage. Leaves fall, crunch underfoot, no attention paid. I'll love you forever. He said half a century prior, and he'll take his pain to his underground cage. Tu ojos fuiste tan bella, he'll always admit. But the love ached as his body sunk into the dirt, and all that was left as he sit was the husk of a boy. Now torn apart, el odio todo consumidor. El odio. So, basically, we're going to talk about non-rhyme literary devices that you are already using. Intentionally, by accident, who knows? Who knows if anything is ever intentional? And I think we're going to start with assonance because we've sort of been talking about it quite a bit already. Assonance is just the repetition of vowel sounds at the at any within in any part, there we go, of nearby words. I think that's a decent definition of assonance. The repetition of vowel sounds in any part of nearby words. So, vowels, that is our, A, E, I, O, U, Y probably counts too. But any of that, not struck sounds. And this is an incredibly useful tool, if only because it's a great alternative to rhyme. Right, we know that rhyme is the same, we'll say, final syllable. Shared across words. Pain, stain. Obtain. Preordain, right? In that case, ain is the last syllable of all of them. And And rhymes are very present. Like, they're very clear. When we hear a rhyme, they tend to really stick out. And sometimes, like, we rag on, like, amateur poets, or I see people do that, where it's like their rhymes are too, like, forced or blatant or, like, in your face, where it feels like they keep just, like, rhyming the same word or the same sound over and over again. Right. And assonance is a great alternative to the rhyme because it's subtle as opposed to the rhyme being very noticeable. We won't usually like pick out if someone is speaking assonantly in a sentence. If someone just like starts rhyming in the middle of a sentence, we will notice. But like assonance is much more subtle. I mean, even in this sentence, the repetition of vowel sounds in any part of nearby words. So like, I don't think anyone would read that sentence and just immediately be like, oh wow, look at the assonance within those two words. Because I don't know, we're just not maybe like conditioned to notice it as immediately. And like, that's fine. That was one of the reasons I moved away from rhyme in my late teens. Forced rhymes hurt my brain. Yeah, I think they hurt a lot of people's brains often. I think rhyming is useful. So, within this poem, we can look for some repeated vowel sounds. And I think we have a great example of, the start of this. The simplicity of it sticks to the brain from spring to winter. And we're already doing it, right? And if we really like force the pronunciation, we can hear it. The simplicity of it sticks to the brain from spring to winter, the soul was maimed. And I can even force it to like an extent where we notice the assonance more so than the rhymes. Like it was almost the case there. The simplicity of it sticks to the brain. From spring to winter, the soul was maimed. Right? You hear me going like, and it's like very annoying. But when we tone it back to like normal speech, the simplicity of it sticks to the brain. From spring to winter, the soul was maimed. And I think then you even notice there's something like interesting about these words. That they seem to flow together. The simplicity of it sticks. The simplicity of it sticks. And that might be a physical thing that's actually happening because my mouth doesn't have to move that much. I mean, like, y'all can try saying this. Simplicity of it sticks. And, like, you can notice, like, how much does your mouth have to move to make those sounds? The simplicity of it sticks. Right? Like, it all stays within the same shape. And if we threw in a very different sound, the simplicity of you sticks. The simplicity of you sticks. Yeah, I don't know if y'all are saying this. You could say it along with me and you would notice it. Because like you, it comes to such a different shape of the mouth that it entirely changes that, right? Because it's like non-assonant. It breaks the assonance of the line. And if we had something that was really assonant throughout, I think it just helps with that like ease of speaking, like motion quality. I've always thought of assonance as something that really helps us with momentum. Momentum without like feeling noticeable. Where it's like, oh, I feel like this poem just wants me to move forward. People might say that about a very assonant poem without realizing why. Um, so that's like our first like useful technique. Um, because, you know, uh, it's like a lesser rhyme. And it's a little more flexible because rhymes only really happen at the end of words, where assonance kind of happens within. We're rhyming like the Wu-Tang Clan. Yeah. She uses a lot of plosives and sibilants, yes. Sibilants too, which my brain also loves. Um, a plosive is like a P, puh, or a B is also a plosive. The things that pop microphones when you speak too loudly into them. Um, Remind me what a sibilant is. Um, it's been a minute since phonetic words. Um, but yeah, those are good sounds. Um, a hiss. Ah, yeah. Hiss. Yeah. Yeah, S is a very like easy one to alliterate. We actually have alliteration of the S, where we have a lot of the S sounds, and we'll go straight into alliteration. This one is a little more known and definitely more recognizable in speech than assonance, where if you alliterate an entire sentence, like people will notice and they'll be like, "You're talking weird." Um, Alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds, and same as all of this for assonance in any part of nearby words. A lot of people think of alliteration as the start. Sally saw 17 seagulls slowly sailing. Yeah, you know. Or, yeah, Sally sells seashells by the seashore, right? Um, that's alliteration. And we're like, oh, you're doing a lot of alliterative S things. And I think that's just because people like know what alliteration is. If you ask a person what it is, I think like most people probably know what that word means. Again, knowing helps you recognize it. So you already know what it is, S0dephi. And I think it works like assonance, or like the mouth doesn't have to move. We get momentum. I think this is where we get the phrase maybe of something like rolling off the tongue, where the alliteration, the assonance, the sounds together, just like you either don't have to move your mouth that much or they seem to flow into each other, sound to sound, such that it just feels like it moves naturally. You already do alliterate in this poem, right? Simplic sa 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 sa. The simplicity of it sticks to the brain. From spring to winter the soul was maimed. Right? That's actually kind of a Z sound. Z, but it is also a sibilant. You know, so you already can do this because you've done it. And it's just a matter of like how we do it. Alliteration can also like connect multiple words together where they feel like they're grouped. More so than assonance, because we like notice alliteration more. The simplicity of it sticks, right? We notice the SS pattern here with simplicity and sticks, and these words feel like nice and connected. It's like if you said the sand and sea, or the, I don't know, boats and bikes, vehicles. If you said, you know, the kids and we can do a C one, cats, right? We kind of feel that these things are grouped, of course, by the and, but also, yeah, fricatives. That's the word I know for it, Nikki. Um, like the alliteration particularly makes all of these groups of words feel close to each other. And that can be very useful for making things feel like they are connected. So alliteration creates connection, some amount of momentum. Rhyme creates connection. And I feel like these are like our most basic techniques. Where those are like the most recognizable things. And even with just like setting out like a basic enough exercise for you to do would be to say, I'm going to write a poem. I am going to not think about rhymes. If you happen to rhyme, that's fine, because you might end up rhyming. It's a quirk of language. And I'm going to think about assonance, right? And try to do this. And that could be like the two parameters for something. And you could do the same with alliteration as well. And then I think it would like round out just like the use of sound. I think another useful tool to work with is line breaks or enjambments. And that's basically just where we choose to break the line. And understanding that breaking the line in some ways can create more suspense, or more direction for a poem, or like stronger stops. And we'll use like this line as an example, I guess. And he'll take his pain to his underground cage. Right. This is like an unbroken line. But let's say we broke it here, and this part got moved down. And he'll take his pain to his underground cage. I did an exaggerated like break there. And he'll take his pain to his underground cage. What you do there is, you end up creating a bit of suspense because you like hang off of two, and you're like, to where? You want to like drive into the next line because it's setting you up to kind of go into it, but you force a moment of suspense because you've broken the line there. Line breaks are excellent to control your reader's pacing, to control the feeling of suspense, and kind of how they move through the poem, which interacts nicely with these other things. I honestly feel like those four are like the most bang for one's buck of anything in poetry. Thinking about stress, thinking about the way the breath interacts with a line, like other technical things like that. Maybe repetition of words is useful too. But that sort of toes the line of being a like structural thing and not a sound thing. I don't know. Um, but I feel like those things, the line break, assonance, alliteration, rhyme, like finding the balance of those that sounds good for you. I feel like once someone has accomplished that, you're beyond like beginner. You no longer sound novice if you have control over those things. And maybe that's enough of a starting point with, the exercise being don't think about rhyming, right? You already rhyme, you clearly rhyme, you know how to rhyme, you do well at rhyming. Now write a poem where you're not thinking about that or thinking about not. Either way, it doesn't have to be a poem that doesn't rhyme because rhymes happen. But then in lieu of that, think about assonance, think about alliteration, think about line breaks. And I think just 3 techniques like that, it's enough to practice for months, years even, probably, to just work on those things. And yeah, having them in mind, not forcing oneself to use them. You should try, but like write a line and notice, like, is there assonance here? You know, is there alliteration here? How can I work with that? How can I engage with that? I don't know. That's all helpful, right? Oh, we got a raid. Welcome in, Mama Buckle, and your viewers. I hope you are well. We are currently talking about poetry, analyzing poetry, sent by S0dephi, who is in chat right now. That's what we do here. We talk about poetry a lot, and I write all over it and discuss poems for multiple hours, and it's sort of educational. We've been talking about techniques of sound in poetry for, I think, like the last hour and a half, roughly. How was your stream? I don't know if I don't recognize your. Are you a writing streamer as well? Are you a writer generally? What's your deal? I'm not sure I recognize your channel. Yeah, but like, yeah, how are things? Oh, and I'm Imogen. That's my name. This is what I look like when I'm not shoved into the corner here. Yeah. You're a filmmaker. That's really super cool. I've always thought that like film would be the coolest thing ever. You've got to go eat, S0dephi. I think we're like pretty much done talking about yours anyway, because we covered, some directions you can go with this. I think this is more than thorough enough to like get you started. Yeah, I think like filmmaking has always been really cool, and it's been on my mind, for a long time. Like I should, write a script or something. I've also thought a lot about like how cool it would be to act, right? To be in a film. I think I would really enjoy that. But I've never acted before at all, really. I run a challenge on my channel where community can submit their scripts/stories, and everyone votes on their favorite. And I make it live on stream? Okay, wait. That's like so cool. What? That's awesome. So I was working on one of the most recent winter stories. She submitted a prose story, so I'm adapting the script and trying to work it for the screen. But yeah, no, wait, that's so cool. Like, not enough about you. That's like the coolest, most amazing thing ever. That's sick. Yeah, so it's like similar here. People send me their poems in Discord. And usually what I do is I just read them, and I mean, this is more than reading. I analyze them. And that's me breaking down, what is the poem doing? What does it mean? What are the, techniques being used, and how is this communicating certain feelings or emotions or ideas? And, really like spending time to understand the work. And anyone can submit, people who are new to writing, people who are very experienced. Um, and yeah, that's what happens. We were sort of just finishing up this poem as y'all came in. Uh, I'll read it another time. Since y'all are here, you can hear a good poem by S0dephi. It's called El Odio. The simplicity of it sticks to the brain. From spring to winter the soul was maimed, festering in the wound. It scrapes. Away, away, the boy from yesterday. Once filled with yellow, now hollow with rage, leaves fall, crunch underfoot, no attention paid. I'll love you forever, he said half a century prior, and he'll take his pain to his underground cage. Tu ojos fuiste tan bella, he'll always admit. But the love ached as her body sunk into the dirt, and all that was left as he sit was the husk of a boy, now torn apart. El odio, todo consumidor. El odio. This is so educational, dude. I wish I had the attention span to be this analytical. And you've got to lurk, have a great stream. Well, yeah, definitely rest. I know streaming is hard, so do that. And yeah, it's educational. I try for it to be. And I think what I really try to do here is to, as much as teaching about poetry, try to teach and help people understand like the spirit of analysis and being critical itself, right? Because I think that ability to be analytic, to be critical, to break things down, takes us so much further than any like individual knowledge of one field or discipline or that kind of thing. So, yeah, that's what we do. But that was El Odio. Thanks S0dephi for sending it, even though you sort of just left.